What's up, Copy Squad? It's your boy, Kyle Milligan of KyleTheWriter.com. And today, we're going to talk about exactly how to trigger a dopamine spike in your customers. So dopamine is like a chemical reaction to certain stimuli. And essentially, the common belief is this part of this reward center that makes you do things, right? I'll get into that and more in just a moment. But what's important to note about this, it's not a logical thing. It's an emotional reaction. And if you want to learn how to speak directly to the emotional center of the brain, which is very much tied and related to this dopamine thing, you should check out my book. It's called Take Their Money. It's at KyleTheWriter.com/book. An entire book is about the practice of emotion-based selling. Selling on logic and facts just doesn't work. So what I'm going to do is give you some scientific basis right now about dopamine and why it works. And then I'm going to tell you exactly how to trigger it in your customers. And basically this will get them kind of like salivating, their greed glands salivating, them wanting your offer and your stuff. So that makes you more money. Okay? So before we go into it, there are 4 big selling emotions: new, easy, safe, and big. Each one of these has an alter ego that can amplify their effect. But for the sake of this video, we're mostly going to talk about new's relation to dopamine. First, I want to debunk the myths around dopamine. 1, dopamine is not the reward chemical that people think it is. People think that we get like this sort of experience when we experience some sort of like reward and then dopamine pops out. We try to get another rush of dopamine, so we continue the actions that we have been doing. The truth is, dopamine is motivational. So let's see. Dopamine is not a reward chemical. It's more closely tied to motivation to seek rewards. Okay, so think of it like this. When you hit a goal, right? Let's say you've strived very long and hard to hit a specific goal. Do you often find out that once you hit that goal, it's kind of like, meh, now you're on to the next goal, right? So basically dopamine is with you like throughout that process where you're seeking that reward of hitting that goal. And once you hit it, it's kind of like, all right, and this is the way I understand it. This is not the scientific backed answer yet. So there was this experiment called the oddball experiment by Bunzik and Duzel. Really basic experiment. They were trying to figure out what triggers dopamine, and specifically this part of the brain known as substantia nigra ventral segmental area. What they would do is they would show images, indoor scenes, outdoor scenes, and occasionally they'd slip a novel image in there. They'd also have faces too, okay? And what they were testing for is to see how the brain reacts, right? When does that dopamine spike hit? And they were testing against regular, like standard, familiar images, like indoor scenes, outdoor scenes, and faces. And then again, they would slip in what they call the oddball, the novel image. And what they were doing is they do like a scan of your brain to see how it reacts. And this SNVTA section of the brain, let's just say the dopamine pathways, would only trigger once someone saw a brand new image they had not seen before. So they first tested for that, and they found that anytime you see something brand new, dopamine, bam, all right? And we know that dopamine is the pursuit chemical. It's a motivational chemical. So basically, whenever you see something novel like that, it triggers your brain to start exploring and learn more. This is very important to your copywriting. You understand, like, this is why people don't pay attention to your writing. What's really important about this experiment isn't just that. We know that novel images trigger dopamine. And now we know that dopamine motivates you to explore further. We know that. So what's really important is that they did another subset of the test where they were looking at absolute novelty versus relative novelty, okay? So this is like key because they had items that slightly deviated from the norm, and then they had completely brand new images that were completely novel. And what they found are these elements, these items that slightly deviate from the norm or just have brand new elements to them, do not trigger the dopamine spike. You have to have something brand new and novel to get that dopamine spike. And we know that dopamine causes people to explore and seek rewards. So we know that to get the dopamine spike, it cannot be something sorta new. It has to be something brand new. And once it is brand new, my brain tells me, you need to investigate this. You need to figure out what is going on over here. There's a chemical release that says, go after it, figure out more. What this means for your copy, for your marketing, for your messaging, is that you cannot do anything slightly new. You need to do something exceptionally new. It has to be completely new and novel. And we can tie this all the way back to the big 4 emotions: new, easy, safe, and big. And what did I say? New is the non-negotiable one. if you're trying to sell anything, you need to create an environment where what you're selling is brand new, a narrative. It needs to have some sort of unique selling proposition or some unique mechanism that makes it function that the person you're selling to has never heard or seen before. If you look at the promotions we run at Agora Financial, you see that we use these sort of almost, you can almost call it sensational headlines. You look at the Inquirer, right? This old tabloid magazine that's been around forever and ever. It's like the top-selling magazine. It's because they're always putting something sort of sensational and new in front of your face. And this is just a tactic that gets your brain paying attention. It makes your brain motivated to explore and learn more. So when you're writing your copy, when you come out of the gate, your headline needs to say something new that they haven't heard before. An example of this, I can actually pull up something really quick. I have one promo that I wrote. It's called the $15 trillion gadget. Okay, so look, this headline here, this promo has been running for about over a year now, I think. America's #1 Silicon Valley insider reveals the $15 trillion gadget. What kind of gadget is $15 trillion? You've probably never heard or seen anything like that before. And it's incongruent a little bit because gadgets are typically small little tech things. And then if you come down here, my pattern interrupt, bam, he's holding this itty bitty thing in his hand. Now you're motivated to learn more. Your dopamine spike should occur. Basically what you've seen is something brand new that you've never seen or heard of before. $15 trillion gadget, 9 times more valuable than these massive companies. That's weird. So the other thing, I really like this one. This is one of my favorite promos of all time. This is Money Zone and by Money Mat Press. And it says, America's #1 stock analyst says, I'm done with stocks and so are you. So this incongruent sort of intriguing headline is something you've probably never heard or seen before. So I want to show you these two things because it really is just coming up with this intriguing angle where that seems very like oxymoronic, that the #1 stock analyst says, I'm done with stocks. Okay, so that is probably like, that's just like weird enough, new enough, unique enough that it doesn't make sense in your current worldview. Okay, so you don't have to say like crazy stuff like, well, like Seth Godin uses, he's got this book called Purple Cow, right? It's just kind of weird and quirky enough to kind of get you to pay attention and look, to turn your head. Another thing, Seth Godin has another title called All Marketers Are Liars. That's another book title of his. And again, it's the same thing, kind of like, it's just quirky enough, unique enough. It doesn't really mesh with your current worldview that it causes this dopamine spike. That's new. That's novel. We need to investigate. At least need to figure out what it is. This goes deeper into the marketing and writing of your stuff now. So what happens now is you've got their attention. They're moving down and they're starting to read your copy. Now what you cannot allow to happen is your copy to become familiar. Once your writing becomes familiar, they lose that dopamine motivation. So now you got to understand this. You put something unique and incongruent in front of them, something intriguing and useful that they want to read on. So they start reading, right? What their brain is hunting for is a reason to stop reading at this point. So at the moment that if you repeat yourself, right? The only thing you should ever repeat in a promotion or marketing piece is your big promise. Everything else, every new piece of information needs to be just that. It needs to be new. The moment that you say something familiar, that I say, oh, I know what you're talking about now. The moment that you say the same thing twice, or you hint at something like you try to disguise a secret that they can figure out, they're going to tune out. They're going to say, I know what this is. I'm done reading. Okay? So your #1 goal in writing, marketing, copywriting, whatever you want to call it, is to trigger first and foremost the new emotion. Remember the big 4 emotions: new, easy, safe, and big. And if you can hammer down on that new, and that means like from the time you say dear reader, before you say dear reader, the headline, all the way to where you say click here now, that all needs to be new to them. It all needs to have that level of intrigue. You cannot repeat yourself. As a matter of fact, I think one of the weaknesses in this video already, when I got halfway through it, was that I started talking about dopamine being a motivational or something like that, where I'm like, they probably already heard this before. What I should have done is done a better job of coming out firing, telling you everything you know about dopamine is a lie. That's something new, right? That's something unique. So that would have been a lot stronger way to begin this video. But essentially, it's not just about selling them stuff. It's about getting them to go down the rabbit hole. Joe Sugarman calls it like the slippery slide, right? Essentially, they're going to keep looking. They're going to keep pursuing the rewards, right? The rewards is what they're looking for. You don't ever want to just be like, okay, that's what it is, and I'm done. That's why we open loops. I'm going to touch on opening loops. And all this stuff right here is explained in mad depth inside my book. It's called Take Their Money. It's available at kylethewriter.com/book. And you can see how I use new, easy, safe, and big in my sales letter if you go to kylethewriter.com/book and check out my sales letter, and how I get you to keep tumbling down that rabbit hole, because I'm always bringing you new information that you've probably never heard before. Opening loops. So essentially, whenever you start a sales letter, you usually make a big promise and you open a little loop. Like, I'm going to explain something to you in this letter. All right? And whenever you start to read this letter, you'll get these answers. Right before you ever get to that answer, of course, you have to fulfill on everything that you start the letter with. Right before you get to that answer, it's time to open your next loop. I say, and here's a cool pitch. So I'm creating a product where I'm recording the process of writing the sales letter for the Take Their Money sales page. So that letter, I am showing like step by step how it came to be, like how I went from draft 1 to draft, 11, 12 drafts. And in that process, you will see that I don't really know where the letter is going at the beginning. I don't really have a good, I kind of just throw a bunch of junk on the page for the first 3 drafts. And it isn't until I have a pile of junk on my page that I start to reorganize it and I start to see where it should fit. And that's whenever you can begin to open loops, because you know where the letter is heading. Okay, so that is something else. I don't want someone beating themselves up. Like, every time I try to open a loop, I don't know what I'm going to say. That's totally cool. In your first and early drafts, you're just going to have a gob of copy on the page. That's how it works for me. Maybe other people are way more organized. But I just have like a gob of copy on the page. And when I start to figure out where I want to move everything to, that's when I begin opening loops, because I know, hey, I am about to give away some information here. Before I give away information, because once you get the goal, dopamine's done, right? The motivation to seek rewards is gone. The itch that needs scratching no longer exists. So you must open one more loop. So let's say we got it like this. We got, here we go. Let's do it like this. We've got headline. And then we've got an open loop, because we got a little intro. Open loop. Okay, so here's what it's going to look like. I need to see myself a little bit. So we've got the headline where we got our cool little thing. We start intro, like, dear reader, I've got a really big opportunity for you. It's crazy. It's going to be a life-changing, awesome thing. Then we open that loop. Just keep reading and I'll reveal X, Y, Z. All right. So then you start talking about the opportunity. And then right before you close the loop, you'll say it's going to do X, Y, Z. That's another open loop, because you know you're going to talk about this section of the copy later. And then right here, you close this loop. But you don't ever want to close a loop without opening another one first, because that will destroy the dopamine. So basically, that pursuit of what is it, I want to figure it out, is what keeps them reading down the thing. And again, you do this by presenting something brand new and novel. And the experiment that we just talked about was the oddball experiment, in which they showed a bunch of different images, and the only images that ever triggered a dopamine reaction were completely brand new images. If it was slightly familiar, dopamine spike didn't occur, the motivational chemical was not triggered, and that person has no motivation to basically read your sales letter for our purposes. Okay? All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. That is all I got. Please check out my book if you're interested in learning how to sell to the big 4 emotions, new, easy, safe, and big. It's available at kylethewriter.com/book, and you can also see how I personally employ the big 4 emotions there as well, because I use those big 4 emotions to sell my book in my own sales letter. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. That's all I got for today. Peace out. Copy Squad.